Ladies and gentlemen, Democrats already have a major problem brewing in Michigan. Mike Rogers just showed up with some very unexpected guests. We've also got another Republican win with major implications for the midterms. And wait until you hear Mom Donnie's latest bright idea for his government grocery stores, because this one may prove exactly what critics warned about. We got a lot to get into, and so let's start with Michigan. Yeah, and so Michigan, where they spent tens of millions of dollars trying to make sure Abdul El-Sayed did not win the Democrat nomination. He still won. They failed. And so now Chuck Schumer's stuck trying to get all Democrats to fall in line. It's just not working out that way. You have some Democrats who are speaking out publicly, willing to cross over and support Mike Rogers. And when you look at just how close this race is, those defections could matter more than what Democrats want to actually admit.
I'm a lifelong Democrat. I voted for Obama. I voted for Hillary. I voted for Biden. I voted for Slotkin. I heavily supported Haley Stevens throughout her race. And now I'm voting for Mike Rogers, because sometimes the election calls for us to look at something bigger than party lines. The Democratic nominee that we've been given does not share my values, and he does not agree with a world that I want my children to grow up in. I'm not a socialist. I'm not a communist. I'm a mom. I'm a proud Michigander. I am a Democrat voting for Mike because I know that he shares the values that I do, and I know that he will work hard for families like mine in Michigan.
This is what the Democrats have done to themselves. That's not a lifelong Republican. That's not an independent. That's an Obama voter, a Hillary voter, Biden, Slotkin voter. She supported Haley. And now she's saying, I'm crossing party lines and I'm voting for Mike Rogers. Now, obviously, one voter doesn't prove a statewide realignment, but she's exactly the type of voter Democrats need and can't afford to actually have crossover. Not in a close race like this. The problem is, if this was just one frustrated Democrat, then you could shrug it off if you were the Democrat Party, but they know that is not the issue. The problem is, she wasn't there alone. She wasn't the only Democrat there.
I do not think people really realize what is on the line. You will lose your health insurance if the other candidate gets in office. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That is what Medicare for All means. So if you enjoy going to ER now and sitting for 6 hours, get ready to enjoy that a whole lot longer, because you may be sitting there for 6 weeks. That means you will be in a clinic, in a hospital, wherever they say that you go. Once again, you say you don't want government in your business. Well, the government will be controlling your health care. They will control your doctors. They will control your medication. They will control your visits. They will control everything. So if for no other reason, common sense prevails that Mike Rogers is the candidate for you. I do not think people really realize.
That was Michigan Democrat State Rep Karen Whitsett on her support for Mike Rogers, the Republican candidate. Do you guys understand what you just watched right there? That is not just some random voter that you can just brush off. That is a Democratic elected official. And listen to why she's objecting. She's arguing policy, healthcare, Medicare for all. That's what Abdul El-Sayed wants to push. Socialist policies. And that's exactly where Republicans will push Sayed to defend positions that, yeah, in the Democrat primary, he can get away with it because they're so far left and the establishment was so weak. But on the state level, that's a whole different ballgame. Remember, folks, that Trump carried Michigan in 2024. Mike Rogers barely lost to Slotkin in the last Senate race, only by a couple thousand votes. And so Democrats can assume that every Democratic primary voter represents someone who's going to vote for them in November. And this is exactly the opening that Mike Rogers sees.
To Democrat voters who feel their nominee doesn't represent them, to Democrat voters who feel their nominee doesn't represent them in their values, all hope is not lost. I'm not asking you to be a Republican. I'm asking you for the opportunity to earn your trust. Michigan deserves a senator who will sit down, whether you voted for me or not, will listen to you, will treat you with respect, will represent everybody. There are real differences in this race. I spent my career serving the country and taking on terrorists and criminals and threats to our national security. I believe in safe communities, a strong America, and protecting our freedoms. Abdul El-Sayed and I have very different visions of Michigan and America, but we're going to have plenty of time to talk about that along the campaign trail. Today is about what brings us together. Great schools for our kids, safe neighborhoods, good paying jobs, affordable homes, keeping our kids and grandkids in Michigan, a government that reminds us and remembers us, and that it works for us.
That was very smart as far as the messaging right there when you think about Michigan being a purple state, because he's not looking to convert Democrats and say, come on aboard the Republican train. All he's asking for is a one-time permission slip. You see what's on the line. You see what's at risk. Give him a shot this time. And he's not worried about national elections in 2028. He's not worried about a re-election saying, hey, you vote for me this time, you're a Republican. Vote for me as a Democrat. You can vote for me still, and then let me prove the rest. But don't stick to your party lines and elect someone and truly change to direct. Let me say that differently. That is a much easier psychological hurdle than trying to turn someone Republican. And Rogers doesn't need 20% of Democrats to vote for him. Remember, this is a swing state. He only lost by about 19,000 votes to Slotkin. It's a toss-up. He only needs a very small percentage of individuals to say, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to cross party lines, and I'm going to go ahead and vote for Mike Rogers, the Republican candidate, even as a Democrat. This is where things get really awkward for Chuck Schumer, because remember, he was backing Haley Stevens because he thought she would be the safer Democrat nominee to go against Mike Rogers in November. El-Sayed won anyway, even after all the money that they poured into that primary. And so what does Chuck Schumer do now that some Democrats are actually starting to cross over to Mike Rogers? He doubles down.
Look, the bottom line is we're going to win Michigan. Let me tell you why we're going to win Michigan. First, El-Sayed has brought in new energy and new talent into the Democratic Party, but also in Michigan itself. But second, Michigan, Trump has so bungled the Michigan economy. You know, the numbers for Trump on how well he's doing in keeping costs down in the economy is in the low 30s. In the country, it's in the high 20s in Michigan. Why? He created a trade war with Canada. Anyone who's halfway decent as president knows that the Michigan economy and the Canadian economy are totally intertwined. And he's blown it. We're going to win Michigan.
Chuck Schumer has no choice but to back Syed at this point politically. There's only but so many ways to do the math for Democrats where they even have a shot at getting back the Senate. And Michigan is essential to their hopes of that happening. They lose Michigan and it becomes just that much harder for them to be able to pull it off. When you talk about these toss-up races that are happening. Right now, the current Senate makeup is Republicans 53, Democrats 47. And they have Michigan, Georgia, and New Hampshire that are right now a part of that 47. And they need to flip North Carolina, Maine, Ohio, and Alaska, which are more favorable toss-ups that they actually have a chance. Iowa and Texas, you know, they keep on floating that out there, talking about this Texas race, is still leaning heavily Republican. This is not the first time they claim that Texas wasn't play for Democrats. And so we'll have to wait and see on that. But Democrats did this to themselves. They got into bed with the far leftists, with the socialists, and now they have to deal with the consequences of, after they get defeated in the primary, being stuck with a candidate that they much rather not have. And in a race this close, Rogers doesn't need a Democratic collapse. All he needs is a Democratic leak. And so does any of this actually show up in the numbers? Yeah, it does. Right now, 96% of Republicans we know are backing Mike Rogers. Right now, the race is 51%, 47% as far as the latest polling, with independents 48% leaning towards Roger and 43% leaning towards El Sayed, and 54% say Abdul El Sayed is too extreme. And that is why I think this story is bigger than Mike Rogers getting a few Democrats to stand beside him at a press conference, because it's about what those Democrats represent. The willingness to cross party lines because they understand and see what they signed up for when it came to being a Democrat is no longer in play. Things have changed. And so Chuck Schumer, he knew this. That's why they spent so much trying to stop Syed in the first place. Now Syed has to try and run back towards the center and make himself sound more moderate and bring this coalition, this Democrat coalition, back together by November. Syed doesn't have to lose a majority of the Democrats in order to lose this election. It only takes a very small percentage in a purple swing state like Michigan. Ladies and gentlemen, Republicans also just picked up another major win in Missouri that could have real consequences for control of the House come November. Democrats had activists that were trying to stop the new redistricting map from being used in November, but a judge rejected that effort. And now a longtime Democratic congressman is suddenly running in a not so safe territory for Democrats. Get a load of this. Missouri court allows new Trump-backed U.S. House districts to be used in November's election. A Missouri judge has allowed new U.S. House districts backed by President Trump to be used in the November election. The ruling Wednesday by Cole County Circuit Judge Daniel Green is a victory for Republicans seeking to hold on to their slim majority in the U.S. House. And so, folks, let me tell you why this matters. Because while when it comes to the Senate race, as far as the numbers go, it is more likely than not that Democrats will not be able to take control of the Senate. But with the House, it's more in their favor that they have a legit chance where that will end up happening. And so that's why Missouri matters, because Emmanuel Cleaver, he's represented this area since 2005. And so you're talking about 2 decades, basically. We're under the old map. This was basically a safe Democratic Kansas City seat. Now that they were forced to get rid of their racially drawn maps that Democrats will argue are for black voter rights, when really what they want to say are for Democrat safe seat rights, basically, that seat is now seen to be more Republican favored. And so with this ruling, now Republicans have an excellent opportunity to take another Democrat seat off of the board. And so when you take a look at that race for that district, you got Rick Bratton versus Emmanuel Cleaver. Bratton is a Marine veteran, a state senator, Trump-backed candidate. And you got Cleaver, he's the incumbent since 2005 and a former Kansas City mayor. And so also get this, Cleaver won his old district with about 60% in 2024 by about 24 points 2 years ago. Now he's running in a district that Trump would have carried by roughly 18 points. And so that is a huge swing. But here's the reason why this matters outside of Missouri in the overall picture, right? Because Republicans, Missouri becoming more Republican statewide, a lot of people are going to see this and say, okay, but it already is. But what they need is every single House seat that they can find, because control of Congress can come down to a handful of districts ultimately come November. Yeah, so when we talk about these redistricting battles, it matters because now Republicans just gave themselves another opportunity to take another Democrat-controlled seat, and that matters because right now, Democrats are trying to take the Senate. Democrats are trying to take the House, obviously, and they made it abundantly clear, we've heard them already express what their objectives will be if they're able to gain back control. And it seems that the one thing at the top of their list is to impeach President Trump. And all that really means is that if you think things are a struggle to get done now, as far as with the majority, even though it's a slim majority, and obviously the Senate has been not doing what they should be done. But if you think it's hard now, it's going to come to a complete standstill if Democrats are somehow able to gain control of both the House and the Senate. I mean, if they're going to gain control of the House, that makes it that much harder for anything to get done already anyway. That means it's just that less likely that it's going to even get to the Senate. And so, ladies and gentlemen, Zohar Mamdani's government grocery store plan may already be running into the exact problems critics warned about. The city wants to use taxpayer dollars to sell groceries below normal retail price, but local grocery owners are now warning those government-backed stores could hurt their businesses. Obviously, we could see the problem here, right? And when one official involved in the program was asked what the city would do about that, she floated this as a possible solution.
I think ultimately the goals of these locations, not just here in East Harlem, but any borough location, is to be complementary to the neighborhood, and really rising tides, right? We can all cooperate and work together in a meaningful way.
Do you mind, what is the, I've heard that term from EDC officials, that these are meant to be complementary. What does that mean? What does that complementary mean in terms of policy, operations, and things like that?
Yeah, I think we're, as an agency, looking at a number of different complementary, policies and programs, grants, incentives that can come alongside these grocery stores to support other, local independent businesses that are in the neighborhoods. We're going to continue to listen, and we're going to continue to engage, and I'll be, alongside the operator as our partner. And like I said, making sure that we are complementary to the other businesses that are here in the neighborhood.
So other locations, other grocery stores can get grants from the city under this?
Something on the table. We're exploring a lot of different options and opportunities. I think there's a whole host of levers that the EDC is able to work within to make sure that everyone has equitable and equal access to opportunities here.
Thank you.
And so this is Mom Donnie's municipal grocery plan. We know, listen, $70 million in capital commitment. He wants to be able to get 30% of core grocery. He wants to be able to offer 30% off core grocery basket with a projected $90 a month in savings to $1,000 a year in savings, ladies and gentlemen. And I went over this before, ladies and gentlemen, as far as just speaking about how this is just the initial startup. And so inside the plan, because this is going to be government, as far as the government is going to pay for the rent is going to be covered, property taxes are going to be covered, but then he wants a actual private business to run the day-to-day operations, to hire, handle security, crime, loss prevention, that sort of thing. And also, I went over this in another video where I was talking about how basically it's a lose-lose situation because the groceries are subsidized, and because literally inside of the packet, as far as the packet that they put together to give to the private businesses that are looking to inquire to run this thing, one aspect of it is that they have to estimate the annual, how much it's going to cost annually, basically, to be able to provide that savings. And if they can't meet that as far as on their own, the private business, as far as, being in the green and able to have, cover their costs, then they potentially will have the government to be able to subsidize whatever additional costs necessary in order for them to be able to still offer that 30% discount on a monthly basis every single day of that month. And so what will end up happening, I'm going to tell you in a moment, but with this bright idea now, taxpayers will be on the hook to not only subsidize the government-backed grocery store, but then also subsidize the private business that's trying to stay afloat. I mean, this thing just keeps on getting absolutely more and more insane.
Mondani's Groceries are ready to lunch and destroy their business. But have no fear, Mondani's Groceries are ready to tackle the problem, floating the idea of grants for private grocers, to keep the competition at bay. Watch.
We're, as an agency, looking at a number of different complementary, policies and programs, grants, incentives that can come alongside these grocery stores to support other, local independent businesses.
So other locations, other grocery stores can get grants from the city under this?
Something on the table. We're exploring a lot of different options and opportunities.
So, Kennedy, this starts as a small deal, a couple $1 million, and now you're just throwing money at everything.
Yeah. I mean, but that's the thing. This is going to get so expensive. So as billionaires start to leave New York City because of the pied-à-terre tax and the other taxes that are coming their way, because we're going to soak the rich. Yeah, they're like, go ahead and soak me all the way to Star Island in Florida. Bye. The people who are left holding the bucket are going to be the ones paying the most taxes, because this is already an expensive endeavor. They say it's going to be $30 million. It's going to be like the train to nowhere. It's going to be $300 million before you know it. And Mamdani's claim that New York City is a food desert, all you have to do is go to the South Bronx and you will see a phenomenal number of immigrant-owned grocery stores where they have razor-thin profit margins, yet they stay in their own communities to feed their families and people they have grown up with instead of moving out of the South Bronx. And now they're going to be undercut by grocery stores like this. And, with the revolt, because they're all getting together to fight City Hall on this, they're saying, that's okay, we'll just throw cash at you too. So that means more money the taxpayer has to put out for a problem that was really created by Mamdani.
Jessica, care to defend this?
No, thanks.
Would you like to?
I will not. I'll let you keep going.
Would you like to just pass?
Not allowed.
4 hours of babysitting, $3K, universal childcare. That's the good stuff that Mamdani was talking about. That's the stuff that Kathy Hochul is willing to help him with budget-wise. This was always a loser of a plan, and it hasn't worked out in record time.
Okay.
But he's so proud of it.
Yes.
And the thing is, it's really interesting to watch these DSA folks get out of the university classroom and then have their policy ideas tested in real life. We saw that in the A block with a sheik getting his ass sheet. And now you have, on the grocery stores, it's like, none of these immigrants, or I don't even know, maybe they're not immigrants, whoever is a bodega owner or a small market owner, they weren't asking for anything from the government. They're not asking for Waverly to come up with a plan that they could think about, maybe in a way getting some grants so that they could pay their bills. So they want to work and pay their bills. What would really help them is better quality of life and getting the homeless people off the streets that, for example, stand in front of grocery stores so that you don't want to go into them. Why do you think everybody has their stuff delivered by Amazon? Because you can't go into CVS and just pick up deodorant because you have to call somebody and there's only one person working. And they've made it so impossible for business owners to actually be able to do business. And now they want to throw money at them. I don't think that it will pass muster. It would be kind of cute and fun to watch them scramble around like this and try to find the answers that they didn't get tested on in the university. But unfortunately, this is our taxpayer dollars and these business owners who don't want it.
And so this is the perfect example of government creating a problem that requires another government program in order to fix the consequences of the first government program. And as I was mentioning before to you guys, and so this is going to be the ultimate, just wow, we really did this to ourselves. The more successful the stores is, and I went over this before, the more it's going to cost the taxpayer. The more people who shop there, the more items get sold, the more they have to replenish, the more ultimately is going to fall on the taxpayer, because at some point, the store, are they pulling in enough revenue to be able to keep up the output, the demand? That's what it's going to come down to. Can the store generate enough revenue, keep up with the demand, and not need government subsidies? That's a long shot, ladies and gentlemen. While being able to provide these 30% discounts, while being able to pay employees fair wages, covering stolen goods, and being able to keep up with fresh quality products like they're going to be expected to. And so the taxpayer is paying to go shop at a store that they're subsidizing to be able to get groceries for a cheaper price, but it's coming out and their tax dollars. But Mamdani will tell you that he's going to tax the rich to go get the money.
Of this manipulation, these ideas, people are really getting, maybe being socialist is cool. This is all coming out of social media, 100%. It's not natural that people are sitting around, reading Marx and going, what a great idea. Let's implement this. They're not doing that. Very few of these quote-unquote Marxists that you find on social media are even aware of the consequences, the historical consequences of these strategies and what it ultimately leads to, which is like checkers. It's real simple. You're going to have a military that controls everything you do. As soon as you give up everything to the state, well, the state has the guns and you have nothing. And then they tell you what to do.
They tell you what to do.
It sucks. It doesn't mean that that's the way to do it, because capitalism is brutal. Yeah, capitalism needs some fucking guardrails. That's
for sure. Everything needs to be. But you've got no, I totally agree. I always joke about it, but it's kind of true. is like Mamdani with the state-run grocery stores. Like, we had that when I was a kid. I literally went to them in Hungary. It was a communist state. There was only state-run grocery stores. I saw them. There's one like at the end of the block where my grandma lived, and I would go there in the morning to get the whatever it was, and it's just terrible. Like, it's really.
I'm very torn on social safety nets. I think we should have them.
I don't think there's anything wrong with social safety nets as long as you have the proper guardrails. And so with SNAP, we saw how there were people taking advantage of it, had to get cleaned up. Now people were removed, and they're complaining, obviously, because the jig is up. There's countless social safety programs, welfare for public housing, welfare programs, government housing programs for individuals who are impoverished and need assistance. The problem isn't having government social programs. The problem is the oversight to make sure that is not being manipulated and taken advantage of, and also to make sure that government is spending your tax dollars correctly and it is not going towards waste, fraud, and abuse. And that's why this story matters even before the first store even opens, because Mamdani sold this whole thing as simple competition. He was like, I look forward to may the best store win. Remember, he said that was so stupid to say. But once you introduce a government-backed competitor with taxpayer dollars that's subsidizing the prices, you're not competing under fair circumstances. I mean, who could actually even believe that for a second? And now the city's already talking about tax breaks, assistance, and other incentives in order to help out private businesses. At some point, the question is going to be, where are you going to get all of this money from? But those are my thoughts in the update. Now I want to hear from you. Drop your comments down below. I appreciate when you chime in. Don't forget, smash that thumbs up. For more, subscribe to the channel. And as always, until next time.